Hi, and welcome to Elevate, Women Leading the Way in Pharma Outsourcing, a speaker series from Vector Talent for women working in the complex and fast-paced pharmaceutical outsourcing industry. My name is Marianne Gissain, Director at Vector, and in this series, we bring together accomplished women leaders in the sector to share their insights, experiences, and strategies for professional growth. So whether you're looking to advance your career, navigate challenges, or gain new perspectives, these conversations are designed to inspire and equip you with practical advice to take your career to the next level. So today we're going to be exploring the art of managing career pivots. So how to recognize opportunities, overcome uncertainty, and navigate transitions to help you shape a career that is meaningful for you. And to guide us, I'm thrilled to introduce Audrey Greenberg, a trailblazing entrepreneur and executive with over 25 years of experience spanning industries like biotechnology, real estate, and financial services. Audrey has held influential roles such as CEO, CFO, and founded 3 startups that achieved valuations exceeding $1 billion. Audrey was most recently the global head of SK Pharmateco and founder, board member, and chief business officer of Center for Breakthrough Medicines. Audrey is also a board member for several public, nonprofit, and advisory organizations and continues to lead transformational initiatives in the life sciences industry. Her exceptional career reflects her ability to pivot boldly and thrive in new environments, making her the perfect guest to help us unpack how to navigate meaningful career transitions. Audrey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with this incredible audience that you have.
Great. So, Audrey, to start with, you've held such an inspiring career spanning the industries and different leadership roles. Can you start by just sharing your career journey and the meaningful pivots that you've made along the way, transitioning between industries or transitioning between roles?
Quite a few. So cut me off if I'm long-winded here. So most recently, you mentioned my most
Mhm.
recent. I usually like to work my way backwards,
Okay.
as opposed to starting at the beginning, but I'm happy to go either way chronologically or reverse chronologically. But so my most recent venture was starting the Center for Breakthrough Medicines, which we launched, scaled, and ultimately exited over a 6-year period with a buyer called SK, which has a subsidiary, SK Pharmateco. They're a large
Mhm.
Korean conglomerate. And it was quite a successful run. And everyone always asks me, well, how did you get into biotech? Because if you look at
Yeah.
my career history, historically, which we'll get into, I started my career in audit and then I worked in
Hmm.
investment banking and I worked in several other industries. But really, through real estate, I got into the CDMO world.
Okay.
And for me, that decision was we bought a very large, what we call the big, ugly, empty pharma building, over a million square feet in Pennsylvania, just about 20, 30 minutes outside of Philadelphia. And as we were curating sort of really interesting mix of tenants and leasing up the space, we realized the incredible unmet need for biopharma manufacturing
Hmm.
ultimately led us to starting a CDMO. And it was that pivot was really based on market opportunity and what I would call mission driven decision making, which is, for
Hmm.
the greater good of society. As I got later in my career, I started making decisions based on is what I'm doing adding to the double bottom line, both financially sound as well as good for
Yeah.
the planet and good for humanity. And it was an opportunity for me also to create a CDMO that didn't exist in the marketplace. I was very
Hmm.
aware of the trials and tribulations through our founding group of all the issues that biopharmas go through in selecting a CDMO and then in working with them.
Yeah.
And we wanted to
Hmm.
be and aspired to be and ultimately created a CDMO that was a concierge level service. So anyway, that was what that was based
Yeah.
on creating something new, different, and a market
Yeah.
opportunity that made me feel good about it.
Hmm.
And the other decisions in my life, like I call myself a very opportunistic person. And by the
Hmm.
way, fun fact, I'm going through this process right now. What do I want to
Yeah.
be when I grow up? Every
Yeah.
time I sort of end a particular venture, it's this cross-sectional analysis of the attributes I want in my next position, coupled with personal constraints. I now have young
Hmm.
kids, they're part of the equation. My husband's part of the equation. Where we live is part of the equation. For me, it's very much Philly centric. I have to, so all of those factors come into play when deciding my next move. And as I said before, it's ultimately, especially now I'm over 50. Let's say I have another 10, 15 years in me. That's
Yeah.
a different decision than when you're 22 and you're coming out of college. At that point in my career, I always, up and through, even now to some extent, my
Yeah.
decisions were based on continuing my education, my professional growth.
Hmm.
Money is always part of it, but it's also, am I going to have professional growth, increase my learning and development, and be part of a
Yeah.
team that I want to be with every day? The
That's so
team that you work
important.
with, your boss, your direct reports,
Hmm.
the board of directors, the investors that are invested, depending on, level of interaction and where you are in the organizational chart, can have a huge impact on you.
Yeah. It's there's a couple things that you just said there. I love this idea of like mission driven decision making that you just mentioned. Like it's almost, having these guiding set of principles that are helping you decide what's important to you and what you need to consider when you're exploring a new opportunity or trying to decide if you do want to make a pivot or make a change with your current situation. So and the other thing I was thinking when you were talking about, I guess, the types of things that were influencing your decisions when you were younger compared to now. For some reason, what came up to me was, your pensions and like the level of risk you're willing to take and your contributions and your pensions, depending on like where you are in your career and how that definitely changes, earlier in your career versus further on in your career, thinking about not only what's important to you, but the type of risk you might be facing in those types of situations or decisions you're making.
Yeah.
Uh,
Further adding to that analogy, I love that analogy because I'm such a
yeah.
financial person. I would say that, portfolio, when you're managing a
Yeah.
portfolio of investments, risk is
Hmm.
very important and relative. But you know what else is diversification. And so what I
Yes.
mean by that, if you're joining a biotech company, especially an
Hmm.
early stage bio or a single asset, it's very binary.
Hmm.
Success or failure. That's it. You either
Yeah.
make it or you don't. There's no in between. Whereas I've historically worked for service providers
Hmm.
throughout my career. It's been about either financial service, professional services at Deloitte,
Yeah.
Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, Center for Breakthrough Medicines. That is a picks and shovels approach to business where you're
Hmm.
enabling the others to be successful. And a service provider model inherently has less risk. And
Hmm.
so I wouldn't say I'm risk averse. I mean, I've done a lot of things that are people would consider risky, but it's definitely a riskier proposition from a portfolio management
Yeah.
perspective to put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, exactly. You know, kind of you've spoken a little bit about some of the deciding factors when decide, for example, going from real estate, going into the CDMO business. Um, Thinking through those different changes that you've made, whether you were going from financial services or into those consulting firms, like what considerations were you thinking about, particularly when it comes to maybe making a change into a new industry versus a new role? Because like you said, that seems like it could be potentially a bigger risk to go in a different sector completely versus, just kind of going into a new role in a familiar sector. So,
Well, I would say I look at things top down and bottom up. So top
okay,
down is, what is my impact going to be? What is the company's
great.
impact going to be? Whether
Hmm.
it's at a regional level, local level, at an industry level. So when we started
Hmm.
CVM, we knew we were going to have a huge impact in Philadelphia because we were
Hmm.
creating these sticky STEM jobs and really an opportunity in a minority majority city to create manufacturing out. You may not need a
Yeah.
college degree or even a high school degree
Hmm.
to some extent to do some of these. And we created 400 jobs that ultimately led to
Wow.
be part of a 2,000 person global organization. And benefits are good. So in any
Hmm.
case, impact on Philadelphia. Then of course, impact on the cell and gene therapy ecosystem in terms of
Hmm.
providing services that allow a drug to get from idea to the patient more expeditiously. So impact in cell and gene, impact on the patient.
Yeah.
And then I would say it's also about innovation. And so in
Yeah.
impact innovation, are we doing something new, different, novel, unique? And then
Hmm.
third, who is this group of people that I'm doing it with? Are they someone that I respect. A lot of people say, oh, is it someone I want to have a beer with? I mean, I don't really, I don't look at it that way at all, because
Yeah.
not that I don't want to have a beer with the people, but it's about someone that's going to help me move our idea forward in a way that respects everyone in the room.
Yes.
And so you just have to be careful sometimes who you decide to do business with, and the impact that it's going to have. And then, of course, always there's a timing issue and a market
Of
issue. I
course.
mean, you don't
Yeah.
want to spend the next 5 years or more of your life working on something that's going to fail. I mean, so look,
Yes.
you learn more from your failures, but look, we all are
Yeah.
in it to ultimately to make money, I would assume. I mean, people
Yeah.
work for the paycheck or for the
hmm
upside. And so picking a a move that aligns with a market opportunity is also quite important.
Yeah. And when you're considering these different moves and thinking about, what's the next step or what's the next place you want to be, I think there's always there can be like that anxiety around like the unknown and the uncertainty that can overshadow some of these decisions. So when in the past, when you've been, considering what to do next or considering making one of those moves, how have you handled, those feelings of uncertainty or tried to find more clarity or confidence in what that right move is?
Have anxiety in times of change.
Yeah,
Changing a job,
that's a great
moving,
point. Yeah.
death. I mean, all of these things are so highly stressful. They're huge impact on your life. And for me, a lot of people just do a lot of great due diligence. And so,
Yeah. hmm
so this is sort of interesting. Everyone checks like when you're taking a job,
Yeah.
right? The
hmm
employer will check your references. You'll interview
Yeah.
with 10 people, or whatever their process is.
hmm
I do the same thing when I'm going to start a company or take a job. I not only want to talk to the current employees, I want to talk to the people that left, because they're going to
Yeah.
give you, I mean,
hmm
everything's biased. It's their truth, your truth, and somewhere in the
Yeah.
middle. But
hmm
to get a diversity of perspective is very important. And then to the extent you're considering an executive level role, I would definitely meet with the board and the
hmm
investors, and potentially previous investors or board members that are
Yeah.
no longer on the board. So anyway, all those things are really important as part of your due diligence. Always look at
Yeah.
the financial statements if they're willing to
hmm
share. Sometimes private companies aren't willing to share, but definitely ask the next 50 questions about cash flow, cash
Yeah.
runway, who their investors are, how long the holding period is, what's the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario. And to the extent a lot of your compensation based bonus, there's always equity or long-term incentive comp,
hmm
make sure you understand the compensation structure.
The
And
full package. Yeah.
well, I mean, because sometimes you're getting a lot of equity or some equity, which they say is worth X, Y, or Z. You just need to understand the mechanisms for how that equity works and
hmm
what happens if you leave, whether you're terminated
Yes.
or you leave
hmm
on good terms, whatever it is, what happens with that part of your
Yeah.
compensation. So understanding that going in will help you negotiate a better package and be aware when things happen that
Yeah.
that are unexpected.
Yeah. That's really so important. I think particularly, in the interview stage or like trying to get into a new role, um, there is that interviewing of you and making sure you're a good fit for that company or a good fit for that team. But equally as important is you deciding, are they a good fit for me? Just like you said, and doing your due diligence and homework around making sure this is the culture you want to be in. This is the team that you want to work with. This is the mission you want to be pushing forward, essentially. So,
As many opportunities as you can,
yeah. hmm
not only for negotiation purposes, but because it helps widen your periscope of what's possible. And so I'm a victim of yes, yes, yes. So I don't say I'll talk to anyone, but you never know. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
what may come of a conversation and who they may know, and maybe it would
Yeah.
result in this or that. And so I like to expand my periscope of possibility and have as many options available to me to help me make that best decision.
Yeah. Have you have you ever been in a position, I guess, where you've made that decision or you've made a move that maybe in hindsight wasn't the best move, I guess, for you? Like, have you been in a position where maybe you've had to kind of be in a situation and think, oh, maybe this isn't right. How do I recover from this? Or how do I make the best of this?
I almost quit a job on my second day.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
I've made 100 mistakes and 1,000. But I
Yeah.
think with career, look, you live and
Yeah.
learn as a young professional.
Yeah.
As I said, I started my career at Deloitte. I actually love that job. And I
Hmm.
appreciate that job for many reasons. One was at a very young age, I was managing people and reporting to many managers. I was
Yeah.
working at clients, able to, in audit, you can just ask basically whatever you want. And it's
And they have to answer.
yeah, and you understand the business process flows because you're
Yeah.
ultimately looking for risks and weaknesses. And so anyway, that was a great job. Now, the reason I bring it up is because did it, fill the craggy hole in my heart, I mean, no, it's a job where you're ultimately opining on a financial statement. You're learning a lot and it's
Yeah.
intellectually stimulating, but it's not fun in any way. I mean,
Yeah.
there's aspects and there's the social aspect is kind of enjoyable too because you're on teams. But
Yeah.
and then, Morgan Stanley, I went to Merrill Lynch. That was a great decision. I loved working there. Went to Wharton, then worked at Morgan Stanley. I will say, I mean, I didn't love Morgan Stanley was very different than Merrill Lynch.
Hmm.
And
Culture wise, or
culturally, plus I went from working in Chicago to working in New York.
okay. Hmm.
And it just was like a very different dynamic and a different time in
Yeah.
the market. So that's why I
Hmm.
mentioned the market. This was right
Yeah.
during the dot-com collapse. This was, right
Hmm.
around 2000. And it creates a survivor mentality. Like it just was
Yeah.
not a healthy environment for me.
Yeah.
I have tremendous respect for Morgan Stanley, but it wasn't the right place for me.
Yeah.
So I would say I think if I had to do it again, maybe another bank that had given me an offer, Goldman or something, would have been better, but probably not. They're all sort of the same. And I got to
Hmm.
a point in my life in my late 20s where I had been there, done that with Deloitte and Merrill, and was looking for something bigger, better. So I ultimately left and started my own private equity firm with a group of
Hmm.
partners. And that was an amazing experience. There were learnings with that, though, from a
Yeah.
perspective. There's always something that is,
Of
you take
course.
that,
Yeah.
like, and that was negotiating sort of the fine print in my agreement. And that became a very
Hmm.
good lesson learned for me. I then went to ING, which is a huge Dutch bank. I loved working there, and my
Hmm.
regret is actually leaving there because
Really?
yeah, that was probably my favorite job. So if I have a regret, it's leaving that job. But how much do you regret? Leads to where you are today, and I'm happy with where I am. So, que sera, sera. And I will say there's been so the before I started Phoenix Realty Group,
Hmm.
it was just after. I'm trying to remember the exact timing. I thought I wanted to work in search.
Oh, okay.
Full circle. And I spent 2 days at this firm, and it was not for me. And
Yeah.
I think that it might be different now, but a lot of it was not the job itself,
Hmm.
but the environment I was in and the firm
Yeah.
that it was and where I was. And actually, what's interesting? The physical environment really matters. And I
Oh,
now ask, I mean, people work from home now more,
yeah.
but where am I going to be sitting? Who am I going
Yeah.
to be sitting near? Because
Hmm.
I know for myself, I need to concentrate. And if I'm like in a
Hmm.
cube and there's a lot of noise
Like open
around me,
office space.
I can't do that. It does not
Yeah.
work for me. And
Hmm.
so that was the wrong environment for me. I had a guy sitting
Yeah.
next to me, like standing up and just shouting in his Janet Jackson style, like, I can't concentrate. Anyway, and the bathrooms were horrible. But anyway, little things I tell you.
Yeah. Talk about benefits and just making sure that it's the right work culture
Want
and
to have good clothes.
environment. So, yeah. Oh, that's so important. But to be honest, like I think being able to say on day two, this isn't the best fit for me is so courageous as much as like going into a new venture because so many people would sit there and think like, oh, I've just got to wait this out. I've just got to like, it's too soon to make a change. I just got to,
Red
yeah.
flags are there. And honestly, we have an expression in business, slow to hire, quick to fire. You got to do the same thing with your
Hmm.
career. Like if you know it's not
Yeah.
it oftentimes it actually gets worse than better.
Yeah.
depending on
Yeah.
what the reasons are for the disappointment. Look, we all go through the honeymoon stage at work, but you if there is something sort of toxic or that really does not
Hmm.
align with your core system and core beliefs, you cut the cord soon. Life
Yes.
is
Yeah,
too short. Life is way too short. Bad
exactly.
manager, you're out of
Exactly. So, when you're moving in between roles in transition, that can often test your resilience. So, do you have strategies that you pull upon when you need to build resilience during these times of transitions in the past? Things that you found yourself doing?
there. Go through, especially like for me, when you start your own business,
Yeah. Yeah.
man, like, are we going to make payroll? I mean, you go through some stuff.
Yeah.
And look, we went through COVID, we went through supply
Hmm.
chain constraints. We were trying to get GMP suites online when you couldn't get paint. I mean, let alone, aseptic manufacturing. So I think you have to. It's really about, is what I'm doing what I intended to do, despite whatever
Yeah.
market constraints. Everything is temporary. So always
Yes.
just keep that in mind. It's all a
Hmm.
phase with your kids, it's all a phase with
Yeah.
work, it's usually a phase.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, like this is contradictory to what I just said, but there are things, maybe toxic things that won't change. But if there's market
Yeah.
or financial situation, all of those things can be remedied with anything that can be remedied with hard work or with time. I would hang in there for
Hmm.
it and keep your eye on the prize, because in the end you'll get through those rough patches and you will have
Hmm.
learned a lot and you will feel stronger for it, because ultimately it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So try to
Yeah.
appreciate the learning experiences along the way.
Yeah. It's really about having kind of that mindset and, for lack of a better phrase, like keeping your eye on the prize and recognizing that this is all going to help you get to where you want to go, hopefully. If it's not, then, make a change. But in terms of, resilience and sticking through it, it's really about having, the awareness to know that this is, like you said, this is temporary. This is something that can be fixable. This can be different given enough time and hard work. So, yeah. Okay. Um, Now you've spoken about your experience across different types of industries, different levels. Um, what what are your thoughts around for someone who's looking to move into a different industry or a different path? Thinking about skills, how can you leverage your existing skills across different industries?
Focus on what's transferable, right? and
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
there's a lot of interesting, I think, online tools that can help with that.
Yeah. Hmm.
But for me, so when I went from audit to investment banking, it was really sort of financial statement analysis, and that translated
Hmm.
really. I mean, look, accounting is a great foundation for
Yeah.
anything, but I leverage that. And what's interesting is too also this client service perspective.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
so I always in my performance evaluations got rated really highly on client
Yeah.
service. And so that's I've leveraged that
Yeah.
my whole career, is just the ability to really connect with people, understand what their pain points are, try
Hmm.
to help them through that. I'm a very responsive person. And so anyway, and I think my emotional intelligence allows me to be empathetic to what they're going through and help them navigate.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think client service, financial statement analysis,
Yeah.
leverage your transferable skill set. And then when I went from banking to private equity, it also was professional services. And so what's important in professional
Yeah.
services and leveraging that relationship angle for me. So if you're analytical, you can leverage that. If you're
Hmm.
good at networking and client service, you can leverage that. And in our industry of biotechnology, you can be, let's say you're a cell and gene therapy expert and you want to get into
Hmm.
biologics. Look, it's aseptic manufacturing. And so, and even going up from something less complex to more complex, from biologics to CGT, find the things that are common and leverage those.
Yeah. Yeah. Having kind of like a starting point of, even if it's not a explicit connection, but doing a
Yeah,
little
well,
bit of work and
yeah, my biggest
yeah.
change was real estate to biotech. And ultimately, look, what I did at CBM, my focus at CBM
Mhm.
was raising capital,
Mhm.
interface board investor interface, hiring the team, doing all of our
Yeah.
strategic and joint ventures, running our sales and marketing organization,
Mhm.
figuring out what our strategy was going to be. So market analysis, outside interface.
Yeah.
Um, and am I going to run our GMP operations or quality? No, no, I'm not. That doesn't make any sense.
You knew what your strong suit was and you leaned into those. So how
Exactly.
how did you so making that jump that you did from real estate into CBM, how did you learn about the business and learn about the industry? Because it's very different. It seemed like it was new for you. So what did you do to start thinking about, you knew what skills you had that you were bringing to the table, but in terms of building your expertise in the business and that business acumen side, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I naturally have a voracious appetite
Yeah.
for information and I'm
Hmm.
intellectually curious. I think I can be annoying at times, but I ask so many
Yeah.
questions. And I
Yeah.
remember once this when we were living in Los Angeles. By the way, I've lived in like every major US city. So in
Yeah.
addition to career transitions, I've lived New York,
What you
LA.
have some advice for life transitions, moving advice.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That's a whole new thing. It is similar in many ways. But I remember I was invited to this industry event as the movie industry, the industry, and it was so interesting to speak with these
Yeah.
people. And I remember I
Yeah.
was asking this woman, she was a CEO of like TV Guide or something. This was years ago. And it was a
Yeah.
woman CEO, which I always love. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
ask her 1,000 questions. And the person, we were riding this bus going from one event to another. And this person sitting like across the aisle next to me is like, "What are you, a reporter? Why are you asking so many questions?" But that's how I am. And
Yeah.
even my husband will say, like, "Why are you engaging everyone so much?" But I just am really interested
Yeah.
in
Hmm.
why people do things, how they got to where they are, and what decisions led to their success and or failure. And so how that helped me at CBM was I did a tremendous amount of reading, online
Hmm.
research. I talked to every expert that I could get my hands on. When we were design building the site for other
Hmm.
companies, the IPS CRBs of the world, the engineers of the world were extraordinarily helpful in helping us to understand GMP requirements and capacity that
Yeah.
existed. And then anytime we hired someone from a CDMO, a biotech company, another a big pharma, each of those
Hmm.
type backgrounds gives you such a unique perspective. And by the
Yeah.
way, where I learn the most is from the folks that are in the trenches doing the hard work every
Yes.
day, and they always have
Yeah.
the best ideas. And so I just
Yes.
try to have open communication. I will say, lastly, that what really helped me, which is kind of unique, is that it was COVID during a lot of
Hmm.
this. And that was to my benefit because I can't travel everywhere at the same time and I have young kids. It
Yeah.
was so nice to be able to attend all these conferences from my home office. And so,
Yeah.
and by the way, if there were 5 conferences at the same time, they were all online, so they were recorded or shared.
Yeah.
And so I just would watch and learn and read every single research report that came out in it. So
Hmm.
that's my advice, is to just do a tremendous amount of reading, talk
Yeah.
to as many people as you can, and attend industry
Yeah.
conferences.
Yeah, I think sometimes people are afraid to ask those questions because they don't want to come off as, being seen not knowing enough or having some kind of like negative backlash. But that is so key in terms of not only building that business acumen, but also getting to know the people within an organization or within an industry and starting to build those relationships. So, and I can see how that curiosity you have and that appetite for learning more feeds into that skill set you spoke about earlier in terms of being very client focused, which at the end of the day is really just people focused. I think that's transferable across clients, internal stakeholders, your employees, up a level, down a level. So I can see how all of that supports that as well. So
Time I Googled every single word and
yes,
then Googled all the words within the Google.
yes,
But now with GPT, it's so easy.
yes,
I
yeah,
mean, the large language model, you just say, this is my background, explain this to me. And explain
yeah,
it to me in 5 paragraphs or 100 pages
yeah,
or 3 sentences. And then you keep asking and asking, and it is, or send me a video that explains it.
yeah.
So anyway,
Hmm.
I think it's easier now, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing what technology is bringing to us. I think there's, there's some people who are hesitant about incorporating AI in different ways, but just like you said, to be able to have something that can help you understand big complex ideas quickly. I always like the term like explain like I'm five, this concept.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so for those who are maybe feeling more stuck in their role. So people who are kind of in the beginning stages of exploring a stage or a change rather, but maybe feel like they aren't quite there yet. Do you have any advice in terms of what they should be thinking about or what they can consider in terms of making a decision to change or not, or to pivot or not?
I mean, you don't
Yeah.
want to take a job and quit after 2 days like I did. But I volunteer or
That's,
take a
yeah.
class.
Hmm.
Those are two great things that you can do.
Yeah.
Either, and by the way, speak to people that have the roles, understand what keeps
Yeah.
you up at
Hmm.
night, what do you love, what do you hate, what do you wish you had more of, different, better. So yeah, just test the waters to clarify your interests and build momentum, I guess,
Hmm.
toward a bigger change.
Yeah. It's almost in a way kind of like a safer time to ask those questions versus like you're in the midst of getting of like interviewing for that job or something and you kind of have to make a decision like then and there. You can kind of decide, is this the process I want to go down? Is this something that I want to explore further? Or like you said earlier, conferences and speakers and things would be another great way to see if that industry or that area might be a good fit for you too in terms of building more knowledge. So
I mean, I don't know about today, but a lot of times I could negotiate discounts because I was looking or
yeah.
new
Hmm.
person to the field or aligning with a
Hmm.
nonprofit can sometimes help you test
Hmm.
the waters and get discounts.
Yeah. And like you said, a lot of times now things are being streamed or shared after the fact. So even if you're not necessarily there, you still have the opportunity to learn from those presentations and learn from those conversations too. So right. And then looking back, Audrey, what do you feel like has been the biggest lesson that you've learned from the different pivots that you've made, and how has that shaped your trajectory in your career?
And causes clarity. So like don't sit
Hmm.
around and think about it. I mean, look,
Yeah.
don't get stuck in your head, I guess. And,
Yes.
and you're not going to regret the things you didn't that you the thing you're going to regret the things you didn't do rather than the things you did. And
Yeah.
so I mean, I know that's trite in the common thing said, but it's really really true. And I
Yeah.
mean, I think we overestimate how risky something is and we
Hmm.
underestimate what the success is. And if you
Hmm.
could get out of your own way and just take the
Yeah.
leap and have faith that it's going to be a good experience if you give it your all and surround yourself with the right team and in the right market environment, you can be very successful. And
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah.
Nike, right? I mean, really
Yeah.
that simple. I mean, I guess the biggest lesson is that clarity comes from action and not overthinking and take
Yeah.
calculated risks, as I've said, but that opens doors that you don't know will ever have been exist. Like, no idea. You think
Mhm.
I knew 10 years ago I'd be starting a CDMO? It's like, no idea. So just take those baby steps or
Yeah.
even bold actions that open doors and it will shape you into someone that's adaptable and open to new possibilities and ultimately lead to success.
Yeah. Exactly. I think, you can kind of spiral thinking about what might happen or what could happen, but you'll never know until you actually do something or you take that first step, whether it's a small step or a big step into something different. So, yeah. Um, and now, Audrey, I know you're a very passionate advocate for women in leadership roles and mentoring. So can you talk a little bit about what role mentoring has played for you in your career, thinking about different transitions, whether for you as a mentor or as a mentee?
Really widens your perspective and allows you to think.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if that person is multiple levels up in the organization from you, they just have such a
Hmm.
different perspective and different subset of experiences that can
Yeah.
allow you to think of outside of your own population of thoughts and ideas. And so have incredible mentors if you can that can really help you think differently outside the box, challenge you on what you're thinking,
Hmm.
and help you navigate those tough decisions. And then, so that's on the mentee side. I guess on the mentor side, look, it sort of is, I wouldn't say it's the same, but you learn so much from mentoring things that
Yeah.
are happening in the current market environment that, I'm 50 plus. When I was 22 and being mentored, it was I was navigating much different things.
Yeah.
My starting class, my first year class of Wharton was less than 20% women, and now it's over
Hmm.
50%. And so like things are different, and so you have to
Yeah.
navigate different things. I mean, a lot of things stay the same, but being able to mentor someone through what's happening currently in the world and the new generations that are entering the workforce is fun.
Yeah.
You get to
Hmm.
learn from that too. And building someone else's confidence and then seeing that result in success for them is really
Hmm.
rewarding. I mean, it's almost a selfish
Yeah.
thing, but you're helping yourself. There's something really nice about seeing your actions and helping someone else come to reality and success for them.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I think, one of the things you said earlier was you asked a lot of questions of people who were, on the floor doing that kind of work in the weeds. And I think when you're mentoring someone that is, who may be earlier in their career kind of doing that work, that it can be, there's still so much you can learn from them too. So, yeah.
Incredibly true, especially with all the technological change that takes place.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, and then just one last question, Audrey, thinking back to your younger self, 10 years ago, what advice would you have given to yourself navigating your career? Hmm.
Take risks. You never know. And then, of course, don't be afraid to ask for help because
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to do everything yourself. Hire to your, if you're building a team, hire to your weaknesses, hire people 100 times smarter than you. And, you know, continue to learn, develop, grow, and take risks.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Audrey. I really appreciated, you sharing your journey with us and all of your insights with us today. I know I've learned a lot from you today, and I know our audience will as well. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's been so nice to be here, and I'm happy to come back anytime. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn or otherwise. I'm happy to speak with people one on one and help them with some things that they're navigating personally or professionally.
Great. Thanks so much, Audrey.